Howdy, you're watching the Palermo Pamphlet. I'm Jeffrey Palermo. Let's get started. So this week on the Azure DevOps Podcast, Edward Thomson comes on to speak to us from the Microsoft Ignite conference about Git, libgit2, and lots of really interesting stuff. So go over to azuredevops.show and take a listen. Also tomorrow, the Azure DevOps User Group, which is a virtual group meets online webinar from anywhere, and very interactive. Tomorrow, which is October 16th, Eric Hexter is going to be speaking on DevOps diagnostics. Eric Hexter has been awarded a Microsoft MVP award and is in a very exciting company and very exciting leadership role. So go on to meetup.com and search for the group, Azure DevOps User Group, and check us out there. We are going to talk a little bit about in our tip today about state diagrams. And I wanted to show, as you can see my sketch pad here, I wanted to show how to draw a state diagram because everyone has workflows or state machines. And so let's take an example of a simple work order. A work order can be created in a draft status. It can be submitted new. It can be somebody can start on the work order to fulfill it. They can cancel it. They can withdraw it. They can complete the work order. And if if you submit it to, say, a maintenance department, submit the work order asking for a light bulb to be changed, but you don't put in all the information that's needed, the maintenance department may reject the work order, and then it comes back to you so that you can fill in the missing pieces of information and then submit it back. That can be a complicated thing in software if you don't get the pattern right. So I'm just going to draw what we have here and how we need to think about this. So if we have a work order, and we'll let the camera focus. If we have a work order, that's an entity. And of course, you may have an ID and you may have all kinds of other information, created date, title, description, department, what you need. But then you need to think about what are the states that this is going to live in. So to start with, you may say, you know what, we're going to have a draft. And it may be in a draft status. And in a draft status, the maintenance department, of course, can't see it. Only you can see it because you haven't submitted it. But then it may also be in a submitted status. Okay. And once it's submitted, the maintenance department receives it and they may begin on it. So maybe it's in a in progress state. And then if they complete it, maybe it's in a completed state. And so there also may be a canceled bucket out here somewhere. It's a canceled work order. Well, you don't want to delete them, but you're not going to do anything with them. Okay. Now we need to think about the transitions between them because that's important. That's where code needs to be written. So in a draft status, you may go from draft to submitted in order to submit it over to the maintenance department. The maintenance department may say, you know what, I'm going to look at these submitted ones and I'm going to assign it to somebody and I'm going to mark it in progress because we've started. Now these arrows are very important because only a certain number of people can execute this arrow and there's some code that goes there. So to go from draft to submitted, you may call that as a verb, submit. And of course, only the owner might be able to submit it. Okay. Now, what about going from submitted to in progress? Maybe only the maintenance department is allowed to do that. So you would say maybe assign or begin, whatever verb you want. And only maybe the maintenance supervisor is allowed to execute that transition. Okay. To go to in progress to complete, maybe only the assignee is allowed to say, hey, this is completed. But of course, the term would be complete. Okay. So it's important to think about these things. Now, if something is submitted and there's not enough information, the maintenance department may need to reject this. Okay. And again, maybe only the maintenance department can reject it. And if it's been started, or if it's been completed, but then you don't think that it's actually completed, then you may choose to resubmit. Okay. Or someone in supervisory or quality control may reject it here or reassign. Okay. And of course, you may say at any point in time before it's actually completed, maybe the owner is allowed to cancel a work order. Okay. So then you have from submitted, it can go to cancel, and from in progress, you can go to cancel. Now, this can get confusing really fast because you have all these arrows float away. How the heck do you implement this? Well, it's interesting. All of these states can be just an enumeration, which in enum is just a list of states. Okay. But then each of these arrows becomes a C# class, and a good naming convention would be draft to submitted state transition. Or you could call it owner submit state transition or reject state transition. Something that describes this arrow and what's actually happening. But the pattern in your code, make every one of these arrows a class, and then have and put them all in a collection and use a chain of responsibility or some type of loop and filtering so that every one of these classes has an is valid method. And each of these, when enumerated through, you ask, okay, for this particular work order, which state transitions are valid? And then pass in the current user and the work order. And then, for instance, if it's in progress, only if the owner is logged in, they'll only see cancel. If the maintenance worker is logged in, they will only see complete because the code knows if it's valid or not for a particular user. So I hope that helps. State machines have been around for a long time, and certainly everyone does workflow at some time or another. For more information, just keep track of my blog at jeffreypalermo.com. And this has been another edition of the Palermo Pamphlet.